be our general structure for the session today, but we do try and be really reactive to the people who are here. So if there's something in particular you want us to talk about, just let us know in the Q&A box and we'll try and answer all of your questions. But we'll start with just uploading your document, getting started. We'll go through the real-time grammar and the summary report because that helps you focus in on the things that make the biggest difference. We'll look at some of the different reports. So have a think about which of the reports you most enjoy using or have the most questions about, and we can look into those. We'll have a quick look at our integrations and the blog and the writing resources. And then hopefully we'll have enough time to answer all of your questions before we finish. So Chris, are you there? Do you want to pop up on screen?
Hi, Lisa.
Ta-da, there's Chris. So Chris started ProWritingAid back 7 or 8 years ago when he was trying to edit his own novel, an Archeo, I always ask this, Archeo adventure?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about what made you decide to start the company?
Yeah, so I've been through the process of learning to be a writer in 2 different phases in my life. So obviously when I went to university and school as well, I had to learn how to write academically. And obviously I think there's lots of sort of set phrases that you learn and ways of expressing things, showing that you've understood the topic, you've researched it, and that you've analysed the subject matter. So I went through that, and obviously the feedback that you get during that phase is mostly from your professors and teachers, and it's generally not very helpful, and you receive it several days or weeks or months after you've written whatever you wrote, and often you don't even go back and look at it and take that feedback on board. You just move on to the next thing. And so I, after 3 years at university, became kind of a reasonable academic writer, and then moved into the business world. And like, I really remember like the look of disappointment on my boss's face, the first report that I wrote, because I'd written it in an academic way, which is the only way that I really knew. And obviously, I think in academia, you're writing to show knowledge, to show that you've done all of that research and you've thought about it.
Show all your fancy vocabulary.
Yeah, exactly.
Impress your professors.
Exactly. You know, they already know what you're saying or you're going to say. And so you have to show that you have all of that knowledge. But in the business world, you're writing to share knowledge. The audience that you have doesn't know what you're going to say, and you have to convey that to them in the easiest way that they can understand it. And so that means that it's completely different in terms of using shorter sentences, simpler vocabulary. Often your audience might not have English as their first language, so you need to simplify the vocabulary. And so over a long period of time, I then became a decent business writer as well, and ended up writing research as my job. And again, that was with the feedback of colleagues and my boss, who spent a lot of time and invested a lot of time in helping me become a good writer. And then I decided I wanted to write a novel, and I realized that, again, creative writing, there's lots and lots of stuff that you have to learn that's completely different to business or academic writing. And this time I didn't have anybody to help me, give me that feedback. All I had was the knowledge that I could read in books on writing, but I really struggled to apply that knowledge to my actual writing and to remember all of those things when I was actually writing. But I realized with my knowledge of like data analysis and software, and also having been through the process of learning to write in different ways twice already, that I could create something that would help me become a better creative writer. And so that was kind of the genesis of ProWritingAid. It was designed to remind me of all the things I should be doing but wasn't, and to save me a huge amount of time. And I think that's the 2 things that we really try and do at ProWritingAid, is save you time and make your writing better, and show you how to make your writing better, give you the tools and knowledge that you need to become a better writer, because we very firmly believe that everybody can write well. The problem is that a lot of people struggle to see what the skills are in writing. It's not as obvious as other things like sports, right? If you I love playing tennis, and you've got different skills like forehands, backhands, serving, volleying, right? Fitness, footwork, and you can train each of those things individually. It's quite obvious how to do that. Whereas with writing, those skills aren't as obvious. So what we're trying to do is also help you understand what the skills are that will help you become a better writer and to practice those.
Well, and I think lots of people don't even realize that it can be learned. I think there's this idea that there's good writers and either you're a good writer or you're a bad writer, like as though Margaret Atwood just came out of the womb able to write, but so much of writing is really learnable, and it's skills and it's technique and it's little things that you learn. The more you write, the more feedback you get, the more you learn. And so I think one of the things that I think ProWritingAid does really well is closes that feedback loop, so that as you're writing, you get that feedback in the middle of your sentence or just after your sentence, and then that sticks in your brain a lot more compared to when I used to hand in essays at school, and then a month later they'd hand it back with a B or whatever, and it would be full of red writing, and I never even read it. I had the mark, I wasn't interested, the damage was done. And so I think that is what we really want to help people learn as they're doing it, because that's part of what makes it stick.
Yeah, I was listening to Patrick Rothfuss the other day, who's a fantasy writer, for those who don't know him. Wrote one of the kind of top fantasy novels of all time, and is now writing the third part of that trilogy. And one of the things he said is, like, I've just improved so much as a writer since I wrote that first book, which is quite amazing, right? Because it's considered by most people one of
already, yeah.
Right, and he's saying that he's still improving, and he's doing that by practicing. You know, I think for me, like a really interesting example from my own personal experience was when I was writing research, we were really constrained by like the page format. And so we'd have to write our report, and then we'd spend a lot of time trying to cut it down so that it would fit within the right spaces. So that meant we had to spend a lot of time trimming out words. And I think we actually probably spent more time getting rid of words to try and get things to fit in the right spaces than we did actually in the writing at the beginning. But that inadvertently was me practicing removing all of the words that I didn't need from my sentences. So it was kind of, I was doing an exercise without actually realizing that I was doing an exercise in removing filler words and unnecessary words from sentences.
Yeah, every word has to matter. And it's amazing how much fluff everybody adds in and how much you can take out, which improves the path of what you're trying to say from your brain into the brain of your reader, because that's all writing is trying to get an idea from your head into the head of someone else using words. And the smoother you can make that road, the better.
Yeah, and the more that you can meet their expectations, the better as well. And I think that's a really interesting thing. You know, I think one of the major parts of being successful as a writer, whatever document you're writing, is understanding what your reader, what their expectations are. Mm-hmm. And if you meet those expectations, then you will have written a successful document. And that's whether you're writing a cover letter, right? When I receive a cover letter as an employer, I have certain expectations of what that cover letter should contain. You know, things like it should be personalized to ProWritingAid. It should show how that candidate's experience is particularly relevant to us as a company. It should give me examples of concrete things that they've achieved. You know,
it should be clear and concise. It shouldn't have a lot of flowery words around it. It should really paint a clear picture compared to fiction, for example, where a lot more description is relevant. You got a lot more space to build your ideas. You can
and they should definitely
add more color.
Contents, which I received once.
If you take nothing else away from this session, don't make your cover letter so big that it needs a table of contents. Okay. Okay. Do you want to share your screen and you can walk us through the web editor? We'll do the first part of our demonstration in the web editor, because that's often the first place that people start. But then afterwards, we can have a look at Word and Google Docs and our Chrome extensions and whatever you tell me in the Q&A you want to know about.
Yeah, I think for us, the most important thing is trying to integrate with the way that you're working, because obviously that makes it as easy for you as possible. We don't want you to have to kind of copy and paste and change styles and mess around.
When you copy and paste, often formatting will be lost or gained, invisible formatting. And so as much as possible, you want to upload and export rather than copying and pasting into here.
Yeah, I mean, because fundamentally, one of the things we're trying to do is save you time. So if you have to spend lots of time redoing all your formatting, then that's wasting your time and we're not achieving our goal. So what we always say is one of the things that you probably think is, oh, I'm just going to paste my text in to the browser and then I'll edit it and then I'll copy and paste it back. Copying and pasting into a browser is always a bit risky, just because browsers don't support all of the fonts that you get on your desktop. So you probably might lose some of the formatting as well. So what we recommend is always to upload your document. So there's a button here to upload your document, which you can also find from this menu up here. There's a upload button here. And the benefit of using this upload is that what we do is we then store your original document, and when you make changes, we then just apply the changes to that original document, and then you can download your original document with the changes, and all of your formatting will remain completely in place. So that will save you some time.
One quick comment on that. We can't show some of the formatting in our software. So if you upload something and it's missing, I see a question about italics not showing. So if you upload something and the italics don't show, they're still there. And so when you make the changes, we then apply it to your original document. So when you open it up again, this is a question about Scrivener. So if you open it up again in Scrivener, all of that formatting will still be there. It just may not quite show up in the web editor.
Yeah, well, with Scrivener, you'd want to use the desktop app anyway, because the desktop app work directly on your Scrivener project. So again, if you're using Scrivener, we have a desktop app that we've specifically designed to open up Scrivener documents, to work with them and to apply the changes to that so that you don't have to copy and paste. So it will save you a huge amount of time to use our desktop app. But yeah, as Lisa said, we don't show the formatting, but when you download your document again, it will be there. It's just a hugely difficult task to show all of the formatting and apply formatting changes to a document, so we don't do it. So yes, I've just loaded up a document. You can see that immediately you get highlights in here. Those highlights are in 3 different colors: blue, red, and yellow. Somebody always points out that before is a spelling mistake. It's because I've added it to my dictionary in a previous demonstration and always forget to take it out. Blue is grammar mistakes. So you can see here I've used worst instead of worse. And yellow is style. So style is things that like a typical copy editor would change. So we have a team of copy editors who encode all of the changes that they would normally make to a document as rules, so that it automatically matches your document. And so that takes out a lot of the quick wins that a copy editor would make. So that's great, because if you're just working on like a simple document, you get that. But if you're going to work on a more complex document and end up sending it to a copy editor, then they can focus on the more important things like, for instance, characterization and fact checking, things that they wouldn't have time to do if they were just correcting lots of these simple quick fixes. So what we like to do also is include lots of information about why we're suggesting things. So if you ever wonder, why are they suggesting not to use buried, then you can click on this little orange icon in the corner, and you can access a little article that will explain exactly what we mean. Often they're accompanied by videos and even quizzes to help you reinforce that knowledge.
There's so much good stuff in there, and we're really adding more all the time. Our head of education, Hayley Milliman, who some of you may have come across in our monthly write-ins, she is an English teacher at heart as well as a published author, and so she's just filling the whole tool with really actionable, easy, clear writing technique to help you learn and grow as you use the tool.
Yeah, and I think this for me is the really important thing about learning is that the feedback that you get is instantaneous and that you have access to the right resources, right? Otherwise, this kind of information would be in a book somewhere that you'd read, and then if you're anything like me, you forget 99% of that, and it never really sinks in. But where are you getting that feedback all the time? Every time you type very, it's highlighted. You're like, oh yes, it's very annoying that I'm always using very. But what you find is because it sits there, and whatever you're writing, it gives you that little prompt. You end up actually improving and not making those mistakes anymore, and automatically removing it. I actually find myself typing very and go, no, delete, delete, delete. It's part of that learning mechanism. So the more that you do it, actually the fewer changes that you have to make, because you're actually learning. And then you also have spelling mistakes as well that are highlighted. You can add spelling if you've got particular character names or strange vocabulary. You can add that to the dictionary. On here, you see there's an add to dictionary button that will add it, and so you won't ever see it again. You can also see on the left-hand side here that I'm getting improvements. So this is just a different way of going through the highlights in your document. Some people really like to go through the text and highlight everything. And other people like to go through a list. So we offer a list, but we also have this concept of goals, and that's very much driven by this document type, which is quite important to set. So we obviously support a lot of different document types, business, academic, creative writing, and you can see here, whatever particular type of creative writing, you can choose a particular genre. I think this bit that I'm looking at is more kind of historical fiction, and that will recalculate your goals, and you'll see actually different goals, because again the goals are driven by what the reader of the document is expecting. So a good example I think is maybe the sentence length. So depending on what type of document you're writing, the average sentence length will be different. So what we've done is we've analysed like a set of books, of good books from each genre.
Thousands of them.
Yeah. And then we look at the statistics for those and say, this is the range of sentence lengths that people generally use within historical fiction or within romance writing or within academic essays. And then we give you a comparison to where you are. So you can see here, for instance, my grammar and spelling is below what it should be, which is this area here, whereas my sentence length is good, which is why it's in green. So I don't have to worry about sentence length, but I need to improve some of the grammar and spelling, which is kind of obvious from the fact that I've got lots of grammar mistakes.
And if you're not sure what any of these things mean, you can hover those little eyes next to them and it'll give you a bit more information about each of these scores.
Yeah, so you can see again, you can access lots of useful information. There's even an analysis of like the sentence length of different genres. There's also, if you click on the bottom, you can read a full article, which goes into kind of more depth on it. So you can see actually in this, it might be difficult to see, but we've looked at different genres. So for instance, young adult fiction, as you might imagine, has got like the lowest average sentence length. Younger readers like to have a lot shorter sentences, and then up to kind of like popular science, kind of Richard Dawkins style books, Steven Pinker, all that kind of thing, tend to have longer sentence lengths because they're dealing with more complex topics. And so you can really set your expectations against the genre that you're writing. So I think that's really useful to understand what other writers within your genre are doing. So even then, if you decide actually, I want to write a lot longer sentences, that's fine, but you can draw a comparison, and you can see, it really gives you an insight into how you compare to the writers within the type of document that you're trying to write. And if you don't understand why your document's not as good as you would like it to be, then often you can see, it's because my sentences are too long, I've got too much passive voice, I've got too many complex paragraphs. There's a whole range of different goals here. For instance, emotion tells is something that a lot of people don't think about in creative writing, which is where you tell the emotion of your characters rather than showing it. So for instance, you say like, he was really angry, rather than showing the fact that his face went red and steam came out of his ears and whatever.
Threw his plate at the wall and smashed it in a million pieces.
Yeah, exactly. And things like dialogue tags is something that a lot of less experienced writers, mistakes that they tend to make. So anything on here that you're seeing as orange is an area that you might want to look at to improve. And again, every one has a nice long article explaining exactly why we're suggesting that, so that you can learn.
Chris, do you want to go ahead and run a summary report? I think that's another way to look at your overall stats.
The summary report is, as Lisa says, another good way of looking at the overall stats. So again, you get these goals, you get all of your scores here, but you get a breakdown across all of the different types of reports that you might be able to run in ProWritingAid.
And every writer is different. Every writer has their own bad habits. Every writer has the areas that they're sort of naturally good at, or they've learned at a young age. And so the idea here is that it looks at the specific stats of your document and looks at what you're doing really well, and then helps you focus on the key areas that you as a writer in this document should focus on to have the biggest impact. Because if your sentence length is already really good and you don't have those long sentences that I have a tendency to write that include 27 ideas all in one sentence. If you don't have those, then don't focus on that. It lets you set that aside and lets you focus on the things that will make the biggest impact. So you can see here, there's a section at the top that says, this looks great, your readability is good, your complex paragraphs, you've got 0%, you're consistent. And then if you scroll down a little, it says, these are the areas where you could improve.
Yes, and you can then go to each one. So if you click on the label, then say, for instance, if I go to, I don't know, unusual dialogue tags, then it gives me a breakdown of my unusual dialogue tags. So this, for instance, is, mostly you should try and stick to said and asked as dialogue tags. So said Harry or said Meghan, or asked Harry or asked Meghan.
Harry and Meghan.
That was completely inadvertent. I didn't even realise.
Sure. All the Americans are like, oh, British people always want to talk about Harry and Meghan.
Obsessed with the royals.
No, but I think it's a real giveaway. A lot of new writers that we see will try and add really flashy dialogue tags, like he exclaimed angrily, and there's a lot of he breathed in romance novels, and they're fine in like used occasionally for impact, but if every dialogue tag is a really flashy, flowery dialogue tag, then it loses impact. It's like anything, if you overdo it, it reduces the power of
and I think
sorts of things.
People do it because they want to show the emotion through the dialogue tag, but actually you should show the emotion through the dialogue, right? And I actually think that you almost shouldn't have to use dialogue tags, because the way that your characters talk should be so different that it should be obvious who's saying something. Otherwise, you haven't given your characters a unique voice. But this is great because I can look at my document and I can see that actually this shows it. You can put in your favorite author, and this shows for Stephen King. So I can, who I've chosen as my favorite author, which you can do in your settings. It shows how I compare to him, so you can see that he has barely used replied or told, whereas I've used it 33% of the time. It's a bit unfair because this is a short document and I've only used 3 dialogue tags, so they get 33% each. But in a bigger document, you get a better analysis. And you can go through and you can see your document against your favorite author. For some reason, it's not showing me the average for historical fiction, which it should be. I have to look into that. But you can see that for each section, you can see, for instance, here, this is a really interesting way of viewing your document through the repeated words. So you can see which of the words, the bigger words, are the ones that are used more within your document. I think for me, this is one of the really useful things, is to look at your document in different ways that you wouldn't normally look at it. And that really helps you to understand things that you're doing well and things that you're doing not so well. So for instance, I really like the sentence length report. So here, what I get is a graph of all of the sentence lengths within my document. And this is really useful because I can look at, there's a couple of things to look out for with sentence lengths, which is really long sentences. Obviously, they can be really difficult for your readers to understand, especially if you have lots of really long sentences in a row. But another one that a lot of people don't think about is sentence variety. So we have a score for sentence variety. So you can see here, I've got sentence variety, and I can see my sentence variety, sentence length distribution. So this is all my sentences under 10 words, 10 to 19 words, 20 to 29, and longer. And so I can see exactly how that compares both to the genre that I've chosen, which is historical fiction, and to my favorite author, so Stephen King. So you can actually see that, you know, Stephen King is pretty much bang on in terms of his distribution to the average for historical fiction. So it is really interesting when you see that published authors really, really do come very close to a sort of standard. You know, even though that each author has their own voice and their own style, actually they're sticking to almost like a set of rules in terms of what they're actually writing. So I think that's really, really interesting. So you can immediately see, for instance, I'm using a lot fewer short sentences and more sentences in the 10 to 19 category. And that means that I think short sentences can be quite impactful, but they can also give your reader a bit of a break because they're super easy to digest and they don't like tax the reader's brain. So they give readers a nice little rest. So throwing in more shorter sentences can make it easier for your reader to get through what they're reading. And so that for me from this document is like an insight going, oh yeah, maybe I should try using a few shorter sentences to vary my sentence length a bit more, even though I'm on 5.2, which is the score, but you can see it's at the bottom end of the sentence variety, so I could improve it still probably, even though it's reasonably good.
I've got a couple of, so in the Q&A, Carl is asking if we're going to add memoirs to the list of book types, and actually that's quite a good idea. I'm going to make a note of it now. And Naomi is asking if we're going to have more children's authors in there, which is also a good idea. So I am adding both of those to my notes and we'll present them to our developer team tomorrow. Thank you. Then I've got someone who's asking where you set your favorite author.
So you set your favorite author in this tab here. So there's the settings tab. This is very useful as well because you can set your language. You can set it to whichever version of English you want to support.
Including the Canadians.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun coming up with specific Canadian vocabulary to add to the dictionary. You can set your writing style, the document type. These two are kind of connected, obviously, but if you just want to go more broad, then you can just choose a writing style, and then the document type will just be a general document type from that genre. And then you've got your app settings here, and in your app settings, sorry, I've got lots of rubbish in mine.
Been testing things.
Yeah.
When we work with business companies, they can add a lot of their own terminology and knowledge bases and team settings and style guide things that you can customized for your whole team or that works across your entire company. So that's why some of this stuff is in there. This is very specific stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, so one of these is comparison settings, so you can choose from this long list of authors here.
Yeah. For Memoir, whoever, sorry, I've lost who asked about Memoir. I always recommend that for Memoir, you set it as fiction, because a memoir should read like fiction. It's storytelling. You still want to move your reader along. So I would choose a fiction setting. And I guess it depends on your life, whether or not you put that as romance fiction or fantasy fiction.
Science fiction, Lisa.
Science fiction. Crime. There's also crime. Okay, so I'm going to run a quick poll right now, and the question is going to say, what is your favorite report? But that's not actually what I mean right now. Of the reports that we've got, if you've played around a bit, which are the ones that you would like us to look at in more, bit more depth? Is everybody seeing the poll running, asking which report you want us to look at? Oh yeah, I can see some answers coming in. Chris and I always love the sticky sentence report, so we are always hoping everybody chooses sticky sentence. Oh, that's me anyway. Sticky sentence catches me out.
Always,
so it's my favorite.
There seems to be a different favorite report.
Mm.
Even though you try and always make it sticky sentence report.
I try sticky sentences. I mean, I think it's worked. I think sticky sentence is at the top at the moment.
Doesn't it normally come up and show us like a live updating?
It is live updated.
Oh, well, I can't see it. I can just see.
Oh. Okay, 3, 2, 1. So we've got, the top one is sticky sentences. Then we have grammar report and overused report tied. And then we've got an extra call for style and readability coming in after that. So
nice. I couldn't see the results. Zoom has got a bug, obviously.
You have to trust me. Maybe I haven't even run it at all.
So I'll start with sticky sentences because it's one of my favorite ones, and you can actually see, so one of the goals that I haven't met is this glue index goal. So I can actually run the sticky sentences report, which obviously is related to the glue index, just by clicking on this label. And so this is run the sticky sentences check. So when I say that we're trying to save you time, one of the things we do to try and do is to point you to the areas of your document that will benefit the most from you looking at them. And so we do that in the readability report. We do that by highlighting the paragraphs with the poorest readability. In the sticky sentences report, we're looking at specific sentences that you could really look at. What we do is, in any sentence, we say, there's the, well, I call them like the meat and potato words, and then there's the like filler words, which I started calling the gravy words, just to go with the meat and potatoes. They're
not gravy. That doesn't work. That metaphor is broken. Okay. Gravy is delicious, and you want to cut down on your glue words.
Okay, yeah, but you wouldn't want to get too much gravy. You need some gravy, but not enough.
All right, focus.
Too much. Anyway, so the meat and potato words are the meaning words. And so if you just wrote those words and nothing else, then you could generally guess at what the sentence was supposed to mean. Whereas the filler words, which we call the glue words, or then they are the ones that basically you use to glue together the sentence, and they don't really have much meaning in and of themselves.
In, on, be, out, get, how, of, at. They're all just the scaffolding that holds your sentence together.
Yeah, so you can see I've listed the glue words here. They, you really can't guess what the sentence is about by looking at those. But they have to be there for the sentence to be grammatical. But actually what most people do is put in way too many that you don't need, and generally you can cut out half of them and still understand the sentence. And even sentences that have a high level of them, often you can actually just delete half the sentence and still get your point across. And then your reader has to read half the number of words to get the same amount of information, which is obviously great for them. And so again, you can click on here and you can get more details. There's a whole long article where we go through what's a sticky sentence, what's a glue word. We give examples of sticky sentences, how you can rewrite them, and etc., etc., etc. Include a video that explains it all as well. So you can go in and learn. I'm not going to explain it all this evening, but what you'll find is that you can, generally speaking, reduce these sentences by a lot. And in fact, most writing would benefit from a reduction in the amount of glue words in it.
Yeah, what I do is whenever I'm flagged for a sticky sentence, I try and just start from the beginning and rewrite that sentence in 3 different ways. And almost every time, one of those 3, usually the final one, will be better than what I started with. And if it's not, then fine. Like occasionally sticky sentences work because of the way they're structured or because of the information that's in it, and that's fine. But I just think of it as, a friendly editor's on my shoulder saying, could you just have a look at that one again? Try it again, see if there's another way you can say this that gets the meaning across in a more clear, direct way without quite so much noise in it. And there's different kinds of suggestions in the app. Some are like this, where it flags something that says, according to statistics that we've compiled from looking at thousands and thousands of books, this might be a problematic sentence, because we don't see sentences like this very often in published work. And so then it's up to you as the writer to go in and fix it. Other suggestions in some of the other reports, you'll just be able to click it and fix it. A spelling mistake is a lot easier to fix with one click than a more complex sentence like this, which requires a bit more work on your side. But, ProWritingAid isn't meant to be, once you get into the really good stuff about readability and clarity and getting your ideas out there, it takes a little bit more effort from you, the writer, to find that and make sure that the idea that you're trying to get out to the world is coming across in the way you intended it to.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of the sticky sentences as very like this exercise that I used to do to try and fit words into pages, right? Because it's all about taking out words. So my approach is always to start with a sentence and see how much I can delete and keep the same. But I know other people actually like to go from the other end and just write down the non-glue words and then see how few words they can add back to make it grammatically correct. So again, it's practice, and the more of these that you do, the easier it becomes, and the better you become at writing. And again, I think naturally, once you start removing words and you practice it a lot, then actually your first draft, the level just goes up, so you end up having to do less work in the end.
Yeah. Sticky sentences were my worst bad habit, and now I come in, somebody in the chat was saying that they love the challenge of turning the sticky sentence. Kristen says she loves the challenge of turning the sticky sentence report green. And I feel like now, after all these years of using ProWritingAid, I start a lot closer to green than I did in the beginning. And yeah, I love going in and trying to figure out how to make a sentence great. I mean, it's so rare that anybody writes their best work on their first try. And taking a little bit of time on some of those sentences really makes a difference. All those little things all add up to a much better, more clear, stronger document, whether that's fiction or a cover letter or an essay or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that this for me is one of the things about ProWritingAid is what we're trying to do is we're not trying to force you to write in a particular way. We're not trying to change your style or anything. We're just trying to ask you the question, do you think you can make this better? And if you say no, then that's fine, right? And you can say, actually, I like it the way it is, so leave me alone. Right?
Yeah.
But just having somebody there saying, what do you think about this sentence? Could it be better? Often the answer is yes. Thank you for pointing that out. That's great, right? And in the end, you're proud because you're like, oh, that sentence is actually way better than that was when I first wrote it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things about writing is that when you have great writing at the end, when you improve something, you feel proud about it and you feel happy, and you know, it helps you to connect with the audience, and your reader appreciates the effort that you put in to make it easy for them to understand and enjoy what you're writing.
Yeah, because every time they have to stop reading something and go, wait, what? And go back and read a sentence again. If you're writing fiction, well, if it's anything really, you've taken them out of your world and taken them out of your ideas and made them focus on your writing again and made them focus on your sentence structure, and you've lost them for a minute. Which isn't to say that we want you to dumb everything down. If you want to run the readability scores as well, because good writing doesn't mean dumbing down. Good writing, or clarity and readability, is about how easily the ideas are transferred. And they can be really complex ideas. There can be beautiful writing in it, but it's about making sure that those ideas and that beautiful writing shines and isn't lost in just some of the basic technical mistakes.
Yeah, removing friction.
Removing friction.
Yeah, so the readability report, actually, this is a bad example because it's all pretty readable. There's one slightly difficult read paragraph, but it's too short to really matter. But if you had difficult paragraphs, again, we point you to the ones that had the worst readability, and then you can focus on that paragraph. So we're just trying to, in a larger document, obviously, you've only got a limited amount of time to work on anything. Obviously, that depends whether it's in an email where you need to send it out in the next 5 minutes, or your novel that you've got like 6 months or a year, or in some people's cases 10 years to talking to you, Patrick, to finish. And so we're trying to help you make the most of your time. A lot of the things that ProWritingAid does, you could do yourself manually, but it would take you a huge amount of time. So for instance, identifying all the adverbs in your text, you could go through and identify each one individually, but it would take you a ridiculous amount of time. So we're just trying to help you do that quickly. Similarly,
another one that I think is really interesting for visualizations is sentence length. If you click on the sentence length report, this sample may not be quite as good as some of the others.
Just like the one in the summary report. So we get a breakdown.
And somebody was asking about word count as well. This is where you find your word count and your length check at the top.
Yeah, and so you can see all of the different sentences, and you can click on them to go to them within the document. So it's nice because you can, like, if you find an area where you've got loads of long sentences, you can just click in and maybe try and like divide some of them up to add shorter sentences, or lots of sentences. They're all around the same length in a row. That creates a kind of sense of monotony for your reader. So again, if you've got lots of sentences all of the same length in one section, then try and go in, maybe shorten some of them, lengthen some of the others to add a bit more variety.
So there's a lot of reports, and basically the best thing to do is get a good piece of, or maybe not a good piece of writing, get one of your first drafts and pop it in there and go through and play with the different reports. On our YouTube channel, I'll drop the link, you'll find individual reports or individual videos about all of the different reports. That's a good place to start. I'm just aware that we're running out of time. Chris, do you want to just talk a little bit about the integrations?
Yep. So as I said before, we like to try and make things easier for you. So we've integrated into various bits of software that you might be using. So for instance, we integrate with Microsoft Office, both Word and Outlook on Windows and just Word on Mac. So you install it, and this is Windows, and you can start the real-time checking just like in the web editor, and you can see very similar. You get the goals and improvements. You get all of the reports that you can run along this nice toolbar up here. So again, it's very similar user interface wherever you're using it. We always try and keep a similar UI everywhere. And then you can just click it and accept all of your suggestions. Like so, we also have a desktop app. So I said for people who are using Scrivener, this is useful. So this is a Scrivener project. For those that don't know Scrivener, it's a piece of software that's used by a lot of longer form writers. It's really good because you can store all of your research in there, and you can compile a document at the end with standard styles. It just takes a lot of pain out of writing a document. And so this opens up the Scrivener project, and you can just click around it and see all of your highlights, make your changes, and it's saved automatically back. It also works with Final Draft, like Microsoft, OpenOffice, Microsoft Word documents, Markdown text, rich text. So this is great if you want to download it onto your desktop and use it, and it works on Mac and Windows. We also have integrations for Google Docs. So this is our Google Docs add-on. So you can go to add-ons in Google Docs, go to get add-ons. That's very slow to search for ProWritingAid. You'll see it's come up. See nearly 400,000 people using it, and click to install it. I've already installed it, so you can install.
5 stars. 5 stars there.
Yeah, we also have an add-on for all of the major browsers. So this is great. So it will plug into your browser, and then you'll get it in Gmail, or like here's an example of it in Twitter. So you can check for mistakes. So again, you can just install that, and then it's great because wherever you're writing online, you'll get exactly the same feedback. So it's really useful because again, it reinforces that learning part of the tool, which I think is really important. Because even the best writers are always learning and improving, like the Patrick Rothfuss example. I think, like I always say, even Roger Federer has a coach, right? Everybody who wants to improve has something that they use to help them become better. I was listening to this thing about gymnasts who like attach buzzers to their joints, and now if they're at the wrong angle with their joints, then they get like a feedback, so they get a little buzz until they get into the right position. So it helps them adjust themselves to be in the perfect position to do all of the moves that they need to do. That's very amazing. So maybe we can add some buzzing into ProWriting, and suddenly your laptop will start buzzing.
Yeah.
Every time I type "very," my laptop starts buzzing at me.
Sort of does.
Yeah, well, I think somebody actually asked, could we put in like a sound every time they type the word "very"? I think it would be quite cool.
Yeah, or just. That's the other one that people use. Not too much.
Yeah. What have I missed, Lisa?
Tanya, I've just dropped a link in the chat that leads to an article that will help you get set up with Scrivener. Just because we're running a bit short on time. I've dropped a few things into the chat, a link to our YouTube channel, which has hundreds of videos now that show you how to use all the different elements of ProWritingAid and all the different reports, as well as we have a constant stream of events for writers, whether you're writing fiction or at work or for school. You'll find recordings of a lot of those on our YouTube channel as well. So there's a huge resource over there. So that's in the chat. Have a look at that.
Yeah, there's this learn icon in the top right of the editor. And also here, there's learn, which takes you to a whole host of resources. Again, so there's webinars, our FAQ, you can request features, an intro video, and we've got like our website is just chock-a-block with lots of resources for helping you become a better writer, because that's what we want to do. And if you go into the writing resource library, we've got lots of different ebooks that you can download on all kinds of different things, like everything from how to edit to how to write, how to create characters, how to
become a copywriter,
yeah.
how to get published, how to build an author platform. Yeah, those. I mean, it's our favorite thing, really. Our whole company is run by writers, and we love putting together all of this amazing content to help people, you know, become the writer that they always wanted to be, whether that's at school or work or in fiction. There's something there that will help everybody grow. And we have this amazing community online. We have Facebook groups. We have a main Facebook group, then we have Facebook groups for fantasy writers and crime writers and romance writers. And we've got a huge group of people that are doing November Novel Writing Month. So if you go into Facebook and just search for ProWritingAid in groups, there's 5 groups now, and you can find the one that suits you, and find all the people that are really excited about the same kind of writing that you are, and helps keep everybody inspired and productive and connected. And
don't have an Archeo adventure one yet.
Not yet. I know. Any Archeo adventures out there? It'll be a 1-person group for Chris. No, that's not true. We could put you into the fantasy group. You just have to add a bit of magic.
Others of us out there. I know at least one.
Just for a last little bit of demo, we've got 7 minutes left. Do you want to run the style report? Because I love talking about all of these little suggestions that we add. We have a team of professional copy editors who have created rules for us based on things that they see all the time when they're editing for other people. And so, you know, the one that I really like is, you can see in that 3rd paragraph, it says, the great ball of fire slowly begins to rise. And people often put begins to, and then the verb, or started to, and then the verb, when it's sort of unnecessary. If I say Chris started to drive away and I never saw him again, like if you say he drove away, I know that he started to do it because he's already doing it. And that's the sort of unnecessary wordiness that these sort of hand input rules and suggestions are really helpful with.
Fixed.
1 click, there we go. Yeah, and adverbs are another one that new writers tend to pepper their writing with adverbs. And again, it starts to boil. It's often a sign that you're trying to tell someone how they did something instead of showing it through action, or often it's turning like it's trying to add power to a really boring word. So instead of saying he ran quickly across the room, ran is pretty boring. Quickly is trying to give it a bit more power, you know, saying he sprinted across the room or he lunged across the room. You know, some of those verbs are the powerhouses of your writing. And, you know, and that's the same, even if it's a CV, like you want to focus on what you facilitated and what you completed and what you know, the verbs are essential. And adverbs are sort of the cheap alternative.
Yeah, I think it's only natural when you're writing a first draft that you put in a verb and an adverb, because when you're writing, you're in a state of flow. So you just want to put down your ideas on paper in the easiest way that doesn't break your flow. And common verbs like make and run and walk.
Went.
They're the ones that first spring into your mind. And then you try to add a bit of nuance to them with an adverb. It's very kind of natural to do, and adverbs are often quite common words as well. You know, like quickly is very common, and then you end up saying like he walked quickly across the room, right? That's absolutely fine, because for a first draft, put it down, it conveys the message, but actually you can change that into a more interesting and more powerful verb quite easily, because there's lots of, you know, different things for walk quickly, like rushed or hurried or sprinted, or, you know, if you're Dan Brown, it'd be cannoned across the room.
But I think that's something to remember, that often a lot of the magic happens in the edit. And when you're, especially if you're writing something long, you know, an essay or a novel or whatever, sometimes you just need to get it out and onto the page. And then when you go back, that's when you add the magic. That's where you add the nuance. We interview a lot of authors as part of our ongoing events and webinar series, and they all talk about how the first draft is just, who was it? Somebody just called it their vomit draft, where you just like get it all out there. And then you go back and you fix it and you make it better. And I think that a lot of people get scared off by the editing phase, but the editing phase can be amazing. And I bet a lot of your favorite
magic happens.
It's where the magic happens. And I bet a lot of your favorite elements in your favorite books didn't happen in that first draft. They took the time to go back and look at those sentences and look at those cliches that they put down in their first run and just add more power and strength and interest.
Yeah,
so love to edit.
The only way to write something good is to write something really bad first.
Yeah. Just get it out and then make it amazing.
At least we've got 2 minutes left.
I know. So let me see. Any other questions? Somebody says, will we be adding a way to use this with Atticus soon? I think that's Dave Chesson's new software. I know you've been talking to him.
Yes. We're not sure.
Maybe, hopefully. Stay tuned.
Hopefully, yeah, we'd love to support it.
Yeah, it's a very cool new project. So Robert says, how does a person know what needs to be changed in a style note, saying that an improvement is needed because a paragraph is hard to read? I've tried to rewrite the paragraph multiple times without seeing the warning statement change. I think
yes. Well, I always say, so readability, there's two things that come into that. One of which is the length of the sentences and one of which is the length of the words. And so the longer the sentences and the longer the words, the harder it will be to read and the worse the readability score will be. So if you focus on improving either or both of those things, then you should improve readability. So if it's a sentence, you've got lots of long words in it, try and reduce the number of long words. Particularly words that are lots of syllables long, because as you're reading, obviously you're kind of playing out those syllables in your head. And if you have long sentences, then try and break those long sentences up. I think often the sentences is the easiest bit to do, and often people just waffle on in sentences and add lots of stuff that they don't need to. So I would focus on those two things. And then see how that improves your readability.
Yeah, great. So there's a few more questions in here that are quite individual, and I don't want to answer them in front of everybody here, but we have this amazing support team full of Amy and Kyle and Ashley, who love answering questions and love getting everybody up to speed. So if you're having trouble downloading from Google Docs, for example, or if you're finding something strange is happening when you are going from Scrivener to Word, or there's a few other things in there, send an email to our support team at hello@ProWritingAid.com and we will help. There's nothing they love more than helping everybody solve their problems. Actually,
those Facebook groups are a really great place as well.
True.
It's full of people like you guys who want to improve your writing, and you know, everybody is really happy to interact with people and answer questions and to offer advice and to discuss pretty much anything that you could possibly imagine discussing to do with writing. And it's a great place for finding people who can answer your questions as well.
Yes, find us on Facebook or send us an email or have a look at YouTube. We've got lots of resources to help get you up and running. And that's it. We're officially out of time. Thank you, everyone, for coming and spending an hour with us. I really appreciate it. I hope you got some information out of this that you didn't have before. Yeah, Chris, Tanya, and Julianne, and Wendy all say thank you. Great. We'll see you again next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot.